The young officer was used to dealing with emergencies, but nothing could have prepared her for this one. As Officer Jenna walked down the quiet country road after patrol, she heard faint paw steps behind her. Turning around, she saw a tiny German Shepherd puppy, no collar, no tag, just desperate eyes staring at her. "Hey, little one," she said softly, kneeling down. But when she tried to walk away, the puppy followed again. And again. Something about his trembling made her pause. It wasn't random. He was trying to tell her something. Within minutes, Jenna would uncover a heartbreaking secret hidden deep in the woods, one that would test her courage, her compassion, and her heart. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning air was crisp, the kind that carried the scent of pine and distant rain. Officer Jenna Morales adjusted her patrol cap and exhaled slowly as she walked down the quiet stretch of country road. Her shift had been uneventful so far, just the hum of the wind through the trees and the crunch of gravel beneath her boots. But then a faint sound made her stop, a soft whimper. She turned, scanning the road behind her. At first there was nothing, just sunlight breaking through the trees. Then she saw it, a tiny German Shepherd puppy standing in the middle of the road, its ears too big for its head, eyes wide and glistening. It looked scared, lost, and far too young to be out here alone. Jenna knelt down, extending her hand. "Hey there, little one," she said softly. The pup hesitated, tail tucked low, but its gaze never left hers. When she tried to take a step closer, it backed away, only to follow again the moment she turned to leave. She frowned. "You don't have a collar, do you?" Her voice was gentle, as if speaking to a frightened child. The puppy tilted its head, then let out a tiny bark, almost like a plea. "All right," Jenna muttered, glancing around. There were no houses nearby, no cars, no signs of anyone searching for a lost dog. "Where did you come from, buddy?" The little shepherd whimpered again, took a step forward, then another. His paws trembled, but his eyes stayed fixed on her, shimmering with something more than fear. It was desperation. Jenna sighed, her instincts kicking in. She'd seen countless strays during her time on patrol, but something about this one felt different, the way he followed her, the urgency in his movements. It was as if he wanted her to see something. "Okay," she whispered, crouching to meet his gaze. "Show me what's wrong." And with that, the puppy turned, tail flicking nervously, and began trotting down the road. Jenna hesitated for only a moment before following, unaware that this tiny act of trust would lead her straight into a story she'd never forget. The puppy led the way with quick, hesitant steps, glancing back every few seconds to make sure Jenna was still following. His small paws kicked up bits of dust as he trotted along the edge of the road. Jenna stayed close behind, curiosity tugging at her. Every part of her training told her to remain cautious, but something about those pleading eyes made it impossible to turn away. When they reached a patch of grass beside the road, the puppy stopped abruptly. He sat down, panting, his tiny chest heaving with exhaustion. Jenna knelt beside him and unscrewed the cap of her water bottle. "You've been out here a while, haven't you?" she murmured. She poured a small stream into her hand and held it out. The puppy leaned forward, lapping eagerly, water dripping from his snout. As he drank, she noticed the dirt tangled in his fur, small scratches on his legs, and a faint tremor running through his body. "You poor thing," she whispered, gently stroking his head. His ears perked slightly at her touch, a hint of trust flickering in his eyes. For a moment, everything felt calm. Just an officer and a frightened puppy finding comfort in each other's presence. But then, out of nowhere, he let out a sharp bark, startling her. He stood up suddenly, tugging at her pant leg with surprising determination. "Whoa, easy," Jenna said, but the puppy barked again, pulling harder. It wasn't aggression, and it was insistence. He took a few steps ahead, then turned to make sure she was coming. His eyes pleaded, "Follow me." Jenna rose slowly, heart thudding. All right, she said, slipping her bottle back into her belt. "Lead the way, little guy." With a faint whine, the puppy began moving again, this time with purpose. He wasn't wandering anymore. He was guiding her. Jenna followed, her senses sharp, the forest ahead growing denser and darker with each step. She didn't know it yet, but this fragile bond, born on a lonely country road, was about to lead her into something far deeper than she ever imagined. a cry for help that only a loyal heart could deliver. The puppy darted ahead, his small frame weaving between tall blades of grass and low branches. Jenna followed carefully, brushing aside leaves as she stepped off the road and into the thick woods. The air changed immediately, cooler, quieter, heavy with the scent of earth and pine. Only the faint rustle of the puppy's paws broke the silence. "Hey, slow down!" Jenna called, but the little shepherd barely paused. He looked back at her once, eyes wide and urgent, then continued forward, barking softly as if guiding her toward something hidden. His confidence surprised her. For such a tiny creature, he moved with purpose, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Branches snapped beneath her boots as she pushed deeper into the forest. Sunlight filtered through the trees in fractured beams, painting patches of gold on the damp ground. She could feel her pulse rising, her instincts tightening. Years in law enforcement had taught her to trust her gut, and right now, it was whispering that this was no ordinary stray. The puppy stopped suddenly at a muddy slope, sniffing the ground before letting out a low, uneasy whine. Jenna crouched beside him, scanning the surroundings. There were tire tracks, faint but fresh, leading further into the trees. Her brow furrowed. "Someone's been here recently," she murmured. The puppy gave a sharp bark and bounded ahead again, sliding slightly down the incline. Jenna followed, her flashlight cutting through the dim undergrowth. The forest grew denser, the air thicker, and a strange stillness settled. No birds, no wind, just silence. Her boots squelched in wet soil as she caught up. The puppy stopped once more, standing perfectly still. His ears twitched and he let out a small, pitiful whine. Jenna's breath caught. Up ahead, through a break in the trees, she saw something glinting in the sunlight. A flash of metal, twisted and half buried in the brush. Her heart pounded. She stepped closer, realizing what it was. The wreckage of a vehicle, overturned and motionless. The puppy barked frantically, rushing toward it. Jenna froze, a chill crawling down her spine. "Dear God," she whispered. "What happened here?" Jenna's boots sank slightly into the damp earth as she approached the wreckage. The twisted vehicle lay half buried in mud and leaves, its front end crushed against a tree trunk. Shattered glass glimmered faintly among the ferns, and a faint trail of smoke still curled from the hood. The air was thick with the metallic scent of fuel and the musty dampness of the forest floor. The puppy sprinted ahead, barking frantically. He circled the car, nose pressed to the ground, then pawed at the broken driver's side door. His barks grew more desperate, echoing through the still woods. Jenna's pulse quickened. "Easy, little one," she said softly, crouching to peer inside. Through the cracked window, she saw movement. A faint twitch of a hand. Her breath caught. Someone was inside. Jenna pulled her radio from her belt. "Dispatch, this is Officer Morales," she said quickly, voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "I've located a vehicle accident in the northern woods, one possible occupant trapped. Send paramedics immediately." She slipped the radio back and yanked on the door handle. It wouldn't budge. "Hang on, I've got you," she muttered, gripping the edge of the frame and pulling with all her strength. The metal groaned but held firm. The puppy whined beside her, pacing anxiously. Sweat trickled down Jenna's temple as she scanned for another way in. She spotted a shattered rear window, small but open enough to crawl through. Without hesitation, she removed her jacket, shielded her arms, and climbed in. Inside, the air was stifling. The smell of gasoline filled her nose as she leaned over the driver's seat. A woman, mid-30s, lay slumped against the steering wheel, her face pale and streaked with dirt. Jenna pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A faint pulse, weak but there. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Jenna whispered. The woman stirred slightly, a broken sound escaping her lips. Outside, the puppy scratched furiously at the car door, refusing to stop. Jenna looked toward the sound, her throat tightening. "It's okay, boy," she murmured. "You did it. You found her." Then she turned back to the unconscious woman, determination settling in. "Now let's get you out of here." Jenna's pulse thundered in her ears as she assessed the situation. The woman's breathing was shallow, her chest barely rising. Blood trickled from a cut along her hairline, staining her blouse. "Stay with me," Jenna whispered, pulling her flashlight closer. She checked the woman's pupils, responsive but weak. The seatbelt was jammed tight across her torso, the buckle bent from the crash. Outside, the puppy barked relentlessly, his paws scratching against the metal, desperate to reach his owner. The sound tore through Jenna's chest like a knife. "I know, buddy," she murmured, voice trembling. I'm trying. She braced her knee against the seat and yanked on the belt with both hands. It didn't move. Come on, she hissed, straining until her muscles burned. Finally, the buckle snapped loose with a metallic click. She caught the woman as her body slumped sideways, supporting her carefully. Jenna grabbed her radio. Dispatch, I've got a live victim. Severe head trauma, possible internal injuries. I need those medics now. Static crackled in response before a voice came through. Copy that, Officer Morales. 8 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Jenna repeated under her breath, glancing at the woman's paling face. You just have to hold on for 5 minutes. She tore a strip from her uniform sleeve and gently wrapped it around the woman's forehead to slow the bleeding. You're going to be okay, she said softly, even though doubt gnawed at her. The puppy barked louder now, his voice hoarse. He circled the car, refusing to leave. Jenna reached through the broken window, extending a hand toward him. She's alive, she said quietly, meeting his tearful eyes. You did good. A faint siren wailed in the distance, growing louder with each heartbeat. Relief flooded through her, but it was fragile, the kind that trembled between hope and fear. Jenna turned back to the woman, gripping her hand. Help's coming, she whispered. The woman's lips parted slightly, breath shallow but steady. And outside, the tiny German shepherd sat beside the car door, refusing to move, a silent guardian waiting for the world to catch up to his courage. The shrill cry of sirens pierced the stillness of the forest as flashing red lights cut through the trees. Jenna exhaled in relief when she saw the paramedic truck burst through the trail, tires crunching over roots and gravel. 2 medics jumped out before the vehicle had even stopped. Over here, Jenna shouted, waving them closer. They sprinted toward the wreckage, carrying gear and a stretcher. The puppy barked wildly, leaping at their boots as if urging them to hurry. One of the medics crouched beside Jenna. Status: female, mid-30s, pulse weak, possible concussion and internal injuries, Jenna replied quickly. She's been unconscious but still breathing. The medic nodded and turned to his partner. We'll need to stabilize her before extraction. Together they worked swiftly, checking vitals, fitting a neck brace, and securing IV fluids. Jenna stepped back to give them space, her heart hammering in her chest. The puppy whined, pushing between her legs. He tried to climb onto the stretcher, tiny paws scraping at the edge. Whoa, easy there, Jenna murmured, bending down to calm him. But he wouldn't stop. His eyes were locked on the woman, wide, pleading, filled with fear. One of the medics glanced up. Is that her dog? Jenna nodded. Yeah, he's the one who found me. Let me hear. The man paused mid-motion, glancing at the trembling pup. Then he just saved her life. As they lifted the woman carefully from the wreck, the puppy barked again, struggling to follow. A paramedic gently blocked him, but his cries grew more desperate, echoing through the woods like heartbreak made sound. Jenna's throat tightened. She scooped him up, holding him close against her chest. She's okay, she whispered softly, her voice cracking. She's going to make it. The puppy quieted, pressing his small head against her shoulder. Jenna watched as the medics loaded the woman onto the stretcher and began moving toward the ambulance. The little German shepherd whimpered once more, eyes glistening in the red glow of the emergency lights, as if begging her not to let go. And in that moment, Jenna knew she never truly could. The hospital waiting room was quiet except for the rhythmic hum of the vending machine and the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes across the tiled floor. Jenna sat slouched on a hard plastic chair, her uniform smeared with dirt and streaks of dried blood. Beside her, the little German shepherd puppy lay curled up, head resting on her boot, chest rising and falling in restless sleep. She gently stroked his fur, feeling the faint tremble that still lingered in his body. You've been through a lot, haven't you, buddy? She murmured. The puppy stirred, letting out a small whine, his tail twitching weakly. He was exhausted, but his ears perked up every time a door opened, as if he expected her to walk through. Hours had passed since they'd arrived. The doctors had rushed the injured woman into surgery immediately. Jenna had seen countless emergencies before. Car wrecks, fires, rescues gone wrong. But this one was different. This time it felt personal. Maybe it was because the puppy hadn't left her side. Or maybe because his loyalty reminded her of everything she believed about duty and compassion. A nurse approached quietly. Officer Morales? Jenna stood instantly. Yes? The nurse offered a faint smile. She made it through the surgery. She's stable now. Jenna's shoulders dropped in relief, tension draining from her body. Thank God, she whispered, glancing down at the puppy. You hear that? She's going to be okay. The little shepherd lifted his head, blinking sleepily. His tail gave a slow, uncertain wag before he rested his chin back on her boot. Jenna smiled through tired eyes. You saved her, she whispered. You really did. The nurse knelt to pet the puppy. He hasn't left her side since we brought her in, she said softly. You can tell he loves her. Jenna nodded, gazing through the small hospital window where dawn was beginning to break. Yeah, she murmured, voice thick with emotion. That kind of love you don't see every day. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the hospital blinds as Jenna entered the recovery room. The rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor was the only sound. On the bed lay the woman from the crash, pale, weak, but alive. A nurse stood nearby, gently adjusting her IV line. She just woke up a few minutes ago, the nurse whispered with a faint smile. She's been asking for her dog. Jenna's lips curved into a soft smile. She turned toward the door where the tiny German shepherd was pacing restlessly. You ready, hero? She whispered, opening the door just enough for him to slip inside. The moment the puppy saw her, his tail wagged furiously. He bounded across the room, tiny nails clicking against the floor. The woman gasped, her eyes filling with tears. Buddy, she breathed, voice trembling. The puppy leapt into her arms, whining softly as he buried his face against her chest. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she hugged him tight. You came back, she whispered. You really came back. Jenna stepped closer, emotion swelling in her chest. He's the reason we found you, she said softly. He followed me for miles until I realized he was leading me to your car. The woman looked up at her, disbelief flickering across her face. He led you there? Jenna nodded. He never gave up. He wouldn't rest until you were safe. The woman's hand trembled as she stroked the puppy's fur. We were in an accident 2 days ago, she said quietly. I must have passed out. I thought he didn't make it, but he went for help. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Jenna swallowed hard, watching the reunion unfold. You've got one brave little soul, she said gently. The woman smiled through her tears. No, she whispered, pressing her cheek to the pup's head. I've got an angel. Later that evening, Jenna stepped outside the hospital, the cool breeze brushing against her face. The world was quiet again, the chaos, the sirens, the urgency, all replaced by a calm so deep it felt sacred. The puppy, now freshly fed and curled in her arms, had finally stopped trembling. He gazed up at her with those same soulful eyes that had first stopped her on the road. Jenna leaned against her patrol car, staring at the horizon, where the last streaks of sunlight melted into dusk. She thought about everything that had happened, how one tiny creature had refused to give up, how his courage had saved a life. It wasn't training or instinct alone, it was love, raw, relentless, and pure. She'd seen loyalty in many forms before. Partners on the force, first responders who risked everything. But this was different. This was devotion without words, without duty, just heart. Guess I owe you, little hero, she whispered, scratching gently behind his ears. The pup yawned and nestled closer, his warmth pressing against her chest. In the distance, a faint rumble of thunder rolled through the sky. Jenna looked up, smiling softly. You didn't just lead me to her, she murmured. You reminded me why I do this, why I wear this badge. She thought about how easy it was to grow numb after years on the job, the paperwork, the noise, the endless emergencies. But that day, one brave little puppy had reignited something inside her, a belief that compassion could still change the world. As the first raindrops began to fall, she whispered, You saved her life, and maybe a bit of mine too. The puppy lifted his head, eyes reflecting the fading light as if he understood every word, and standing there in the rain, Officer Jenna Morales knew she'd never forget the day a small German shepherd reminded her what true courage looked like. A few weeks later, the sun shone warm over the small suburban neighborhood as Officer Jenna pulled her patrol car to a stop in front of a modest brick house. Birds chirped, children's laughter echoed faintly in the distance, and everything felt peaceful. A far cry from the chaos of that day in the woods. She smiled as she stepped out carrying a small box wrapped in blue paper. Before she could knock, the front door opened. The woman, now healthier, her arm in a soft sling, stood there with tears glistening in her eyes. "Officer Morales," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "You didn't have to come. I wanted to see how you were doing," Jenna replied warmly, "and to check on a certain little hero." At the mention of the word, a familiar bark rang out. The tiny German shepherd, a Buddy, bounded toward her, tail wagging furiously. He jumped into her arms as if no time had passed at all. Jenna laughed, hugging him tight. "Well, someone looks stronger." The woman smiled, watching the reunion. "He hasn't left my side since the accident," she said. "The doctor said I only survived because he got help in time." Her voice quivered. "I owe him everything." Jenna set the gift box on the table. "That's for you both," she said. Inside was a small silver tag engraved with a single word: Hero. Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she clipped it onto Buddy's collar. "It's perfect," she whispered. Jenna crouched beside the dog, rubbing his neck gently. "You're a reminder, Buddy," she said softly, "that sometimes the smallest hearts carry the biggest courage." As she stood to leave, the woman's voice stopped her. "Thank you for listening to him that day." Jenna turned, smiling through the sunlight. "No," she replied. "Thank him for never giving up." The camera pans out as Buddy rests by the window, sunlight gleaming off his new tag. Sometimes the smallest heroes wear the softest fur. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and love.